Have you guys ever wondered how you would convert a 25-year-old legendary character for a custom army? Who I'm talking about is Suleiman the Saracen. So Suleiman was a character introduced in Bretonnia 5th edition. Long story short, he lost to a Bretonian character and became his best friend. The miniature is simply beautiful. It is exactly what an Araby soldier should look like, and I really wanted to use him as my general. So stay and watch me turn Suleiman from this 5th edition model to this new miniature. So here's the base model of Suleiman, really beautiful, and you can see all the amazing detail they managed to get into him. He has all this ornate armor, and his horse I ended up chopping into quite a few pieces as it's the old 5th edition horse, very static, and for my general I wanted him to be very impressive, and I basically sawed him in half, which was a pain to do, but it had to be done. And we're setting the foundation of the horse. I'm using spare sprue pieces to get the exact measurements so the horse looks the part and it helps with the thickness. If I use wire, I have to bulk it out with clay and I don't want to waste any more green stuff. And onto the sculpting. So I start building up the muscle structure of the horse. This part I recommend you have reference photos as it really does help get the muscles more realistic. And I have to match the Games Workshop plastic horse, so the muscle structure isn't exactly anatomically correct, again, relying on the Games Workshop model as a guide. In this clip, you're going to see me how I kind of use my sculpting tools. So to get the, I guess, sharpness, I use this chisel tool and I'll be pushing it around here and there. At this point, I'm just showing how much I've got done. Here exactly is what I do. So I use this flat tool and I simply press gently to form the basically recesses of the muscle, and I can smooth things out using it. I don't use much hand lotion. I use a lot of water. If the clay does feel a bit too tacky, I will resort to the hand cream, but I try to avoid to use it as I don't like the smell of it too much. After I use this chisel tool a bit, I will switch over eventually to the sharp silicone tool. This way I can smooth out those very sharp edges as this is a organic creature. You don't want lines that you would see in more armor and metal. And I'm just showing you a bit more. Once you have that structure, I'm starting to build up more of the length of the horse leg. Again, working in small stages, trying to get everything smooth as possible. I want the model to basically look like it was casted like it. So to ensure I have everything smooth, I have to work in certain portions. So I keep going back and forth with the tool to make sure all of the muscle has no imperfections and try to get it as smooth as I possibly can. Moving along to Suleiman himself, at this stage I cut more of his hands and sword off. The reason I'm doing this is so I can get the pose I want. So it's pretty gnarly how much I had to cut. Just use a filing tool and continue to shave the metal to make it smooth. For the sword, I was like a blacksmith. I used the file to basically make my own handle. This will help when I have to sculpt the hand around the sword. So again, working in stages, take your time, there's no rush. And for Suleiman, again, I really sanded that whole portion flat. I can always rebuild sections I damaged with sculpting. So back to the horse, I had to shave off the reins on the horse. As the new pose, I have to have a fresh start and a fresh canvas. And here I assembled the model, so Suleiman is arched more forward with the new pose. I want it to be rearing up as you see in a lot of pieces of artwork and the famous pose of Napoleon with the charge. So it required a lot of tinkering and positioning. Once that's done, I started sculpting the armor underneath the connection point and his hand. I'm trying to now rebuild the details on the original model that I destroyed during the converting stage. Again, don't be afraid to chop more off. we can always rebuild it with sculpting. And here you can see I started sculpting that Saracen armor you see on the original Suleiman and the armor you see on my Talisman warriors. I do like it a lot, pretty straightforward, just some squares to sculpt. And at this portion, I started sculpting the remaining cloth that I damaged originally. Again, have reference photos, have extra miniatures on hand, so you can always look back of how cloth should naturally flow. Again, all this is self-taught, just have references on you at all times. This detail you won't see a lot, but just for the sake of completion, I had to sculpt the back of the saddle. I never know how much you'll see at the end of the product, so I usually cover all of the steps, even if I'm not going to see it. And here is the most important part, where the reins. Really had fun angling them as I want him grabbing it, so he's pulling on the horse so it's rearing up. I'm really happy with how it came out, and it looks a lot more dynamic. Here I'm just sculpting the gap now of the horse. So the plastic horses had this disgusting gap going all around. I'm just trying to fill it all up. And at this point of the sculpting journey, I went crazy with the cape. I wanted it to look very flowy, very dynamic. It is not realistic at all. I wanted something more eye-catching, and I had a ton of fun with it. When you sculpt the cape, always have fun with the rippling effect. If you want a flat cape, it kind of is boring, so by doing this, you kind of kill the time by having fun. This was a huge jump in the sculpting. I added the hands and the sword. This portion I really should have taken more in between photos and videos, but you have to make pretty much small squares and take your time sculpting the fingers in. At this point of the model, I got a lot more of the detail through, and he is probably 99% complete at this point. And here is Suleiman fully complete with all the basically sculpting out of the way. Really proud of the pose. This took about a day and 2 hours to complete. If you work in stages again, you can actually get the model done fairly quickly, as certain parts dry by the time you get to another section of the model. And for painting, I really didn't record much. I got too distracted, but I'll cover what I have for footage. So we're base coating the flesh and my typical skin recipe. I will probably make a painting guide in the near future. At this stage, I started base coating my orange yellow scheme. This is Wild Rider Red. Again, I am going to apologize. You're going to see massive jumps in how much I painted the guy. A lot of it was trial and error. And here, moving on to the blue cloth, this is McCraig blue. It is a blue that I really like. It goes on fairly nicely, and I just like the deep richness of it. I started painting the eyes, didn't really capture it, just showing a current work in progress. And here's the jump. A lot of the model is actually completed. I just got too distracted, and I really wish I recorded more, but you can see I'm base coating the boots. The boots are base coated in Mornfang Brown by GW. And at this stage, again, another huge jump. I started painting the horse scheme, and it was a real pain. It probably took me the bulk of my painting trying to get this weird gray white tone full of speckles. I forgot the name of the horse, but it's a lovely looking horse. And here I start doing my typical metal recipe. You can find I believe my painting tutorial somewhere in my big catalog of videos. I definitely covered how I paint my traditional metals. And here I think I'm adding the third or fourth highlight to it. Pretty fun and very therapeutic. My non-metallic style is very cartoony or stylized, which I do like. It's pretty fast to do. And here, I think we're adding the finishing touches to the metal. I think there's one other highlight, which would just be the pure white. This stage, again, fairly relaxed, so I was enjoying the process. And at this stage of the model, I'm actually painting the red-tailed hawk that you see throughout my army. I think this one was the final highlight on the The brown parts, again, I wish I recorded more. I just got too distracted when I was painting the model. And guys, here is the great reveal of Suleiman the Saracen. He will be my general for my Araby army. And as you just saw from all the work in progress and the slight painting video, he is probably my best piece of my army as of today. He really pushed my sculpting boundaries again. I felt like I was getting very rusty, and I wanted to have a project that really forced my hand. So let's go into a bit more detail of the model and show some close-ups. So where to start other than now that he's fully painted, the horse inspiration, I'll throw it up here. I believe it is, I typed in Arabian horse and I'll put the breed right below the photo. And this horse just struck me as such a beautiful color. It's so unique and it just stands out. So the way I painted it involved a lot of glazing and shading. He is a little bit dirty. I didn't want to make him a pure white. And I know it sounds like a cop out, but on the camera, the transitions are a little bit harsher than in real life, but I do think it presents the model as you would see it on the tabletop. I'm fairly happy with the eyes and the reins. I want to keep the model more muted. And as you can see with the main color, I wanted it to be quite striking. And I had fun glazing the black muzzle all the way down. So in regards to Suleiman himself, I painted him the same way I painted every single model for my Araby army. And he was a total fun project from start to finish. I was worried that the colors might not work actually, but I'm happy everything played out the way it should have. So the only difference I did was I reduced the freehand. From this back view, I was worried if I put too much freehand, the model might get a little bit too busy. And I really didn't want the attention taken away from just the whole pose. And I should speak upon the pose a little bit. I'll put another photo for inspiration. A lot of my inspiration came from the photos of Napoleon and any Araby cover art I've seen, so I'll throw it all up right there. And for me, it's such a commanding pose. I wanted it in my army. Besides that, I think everything else is pretty straightforward. He fits the army really well. He is quite tall now, and he is the only model that I will paint in this style, as it was a big pain to do so. And something I should focus now on is the red-tailed hawk. As you guys know, for my army, a lot of my leaders have a animal companion. And I think for my main leaders, I wanted it to be the iconic red-tailed hawk for Araby lore. However, I didn't want the hawk on top of the model anywhere because I thought it'd be too distracting. So what I had to do was, looking at the whole model, I thought it made sense to have the hawk swooping through. And, you know, when you look from this angle, again, it might be a little bit too close to the ground, but I'm limited in how I can get that effect to go. And actually, let me grab him and show the underneath of the hawk. I had a lot of fun with the glazing and the painting. And here we have Suleiman leading the whole Araby army. I think you can tell from this angle, he does look very kingly, and I'm beyond happy. I know typically in game he'd be pointing straight forward, but it gives me the impression he is yelling charge and the whole army is coming forward. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. He was very extensive, but I'm very proud of how he turned out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this Araby work in progress / update.